Hi, this is Carrie Brownstein.
This is DJ Premier.
This is Darren Aronofsky.
You got the RZA right here.
Rose McGowan.
Radiohead.
Aisha Tyler.
Tribe Called Quest.
Fred Armisen.
Prince Paul.
Javier Munoz. Seth Meyers.
Frankie Cosmos.
Flying Lotus.
Hi, we're Chaim, and you're listening to the Talkhouse Podcast.
Hello and welcome to the Talkhouse Podcast. I'm Josh Modell, and I am not alone in this intro today. I'm joined by Talkhouse producer and the glue that holds it all together, Keenan Kush. Welcome, Keenan.
Hi, Josh. Great to be here.
Thanks for joining me. I would like people to know that you're the secret sauce behind every episode. And so I'm glad that we get to hear you today to talk about an episode that really kind of was your idea in a way. These are bands that we have playfully dubbed Keenan-core. And which bands do we have in conversation today?
Sure. I don't know if I can take full credit because they kind of had this idea, approached me, and we tweaked it a little bit. But the bands are Kit Sebastian, this kind of Turkish Brazilian, I think they even identify as having kind of Azerbaijan influences, a band based out of, I think they're out of London right now, but previously on Mr. Bongo Records, for those who know the record label, very Brazilian based. And they are now on Brain Feeder Records. That would be Flying Lotus's record label in LA.
Amazing stamp of approval right there.
Yes. And they are paired up with Pearl and the Oysters, who I'll have to be honest, I wasn't entirely familiar with this band, but they are right up in my kind of genre of psych pop. These are two francophones who actually left France, moved down to Gainesville, Florida, before finally ending up where they are now in LA. And yeah, they kind of have this pop structure songs with this kind of psychedelic, almost even Stereolab-esque sound to them. So sometimes real drums, sometimes drum machines, but very much kind of world building in their albums and their songs.
These bands share sort of a playful mixture of all these kind of influences from all over the world, yeah?
Yeah, I think there's kind of a lot of overlapping influences just in their sounds. They're not, I would say, necessarily directly close sound-wise, pop versus much more of a Turkish kind of vibe. But they also have a lot of things in common, as they kind of discovered in this chat. They've left their home countries. Merv from Kit Sebastian left Turkey to move to London, and Jojo and Juju, as they like to call themselves, left France for the USA.
So what else do they kind of get into in this conversation, Keenan?
Yeah, they talk about some of the similarities and differences between their bands. I think cinema is a big part of both of their sounds. So they kind of talk about favorite directors and whether or not they would do soundtracks. They also talk about analog versus digital recordings. And they also just kind of get into a little bit of their life stories as bands that have left their home country, especially for Pearl and the Oysters, who really, when they left France, the band kind of developed and they found this DIY scene in Gainesville, Florida, and kind of found the chops of really being a true DIY musician, from, figuring out low-cost ways to record to, managing yourself, going out on the road. And they've sort of figured out all the indie components of being a band by themselves.
That's awesome. Do we have a little bit of a song from each one to let the people hear what they're about to hear?
We do. From Kit Sebastian's 2024 record, New International, we have the very first track and lead single, Faust.
Awesome. And how about a Pearl and the Oysters nibble for us?
From Pearl and the Oysters' Planet Pearl, we have a little bit of Side Quest.
That's awesome, Keenan. Thanks for setting this one up.
Of course. Let's roll the tape.
So the first thing we'd like to say is, we've moved in very similar circles and we love your music. So it's a real pleasure to finally meet you and to get to speak to you guys.
Likewise. I feel the same way. Yeah, it's an honor and a pleasure to meet you, seriously.
I think our sound is quite different, obviously. But I think what we're perhaps interested in and the effect of our influences and how we channel our influences from the past into our music is quite similar. And I think that's perhaps where our similarities lie. Listening to your music for years, I've always sensed, obviously, influences from the 1980s, especially kind of Japanese 1980s music, whilst I guess we're more 70s, 60s, and sort of influences slightly closer to home in the Middle East and Europe. But I've always found these are similar ways of doing things, I think, just different influences.
Yeah, I would say so. Definitely. Well, it's funny because I think that obviously this sort of, I guess, trajectory of our bands and the fact that they are very transnational is also like something that we share, but in like different ways, which I thought was interesting. And I was curious, Kit, about the link with France, because how we discovered your band was through Alexandre Gimnez, who ran Coq Macadam, the French label.
Of course. He is a good friend of ours, yeah.
So he introduced us to your first record. Was it 2018 or 2017?
2019.
2019, okay, yeah. So well, that I thought that was earlier than that for some reason. But I remember because, so we released music on his label. Our first 2 albums, I think we did with Coq Macadam. And he was the one who kind of, put us onto you. And I was wondering at the time, I was under the impression that it was half based in France, or that maybe you were in France. And I was always wondering about that. Or if you had like any connection in particular.
Yeah, I've kind of got a house there, so I live between the UK and France. But we occasionally record there. So the first album, the instruments were recorded there. And the last album, the vocals were recorded there. I think both for Merv and I, the culture of France and the records of France are very important and integral to the sound.
Well, also bouncing your first question about, how we were both very influenced by an era and a sound, and I guess, yeah, the French sound is also a very big influence for you too. And I think something that links both of our bands is that we're very big music lover. I mean, okay, it seems pretty obvious for a band, but,
no, but I feel like it is. We have
a lot of reverence to the music we love, and I think we make a point out of like really assimilating the essence of a sound, a production from certain eras, and then we're not. I don't think neither of us are really the type who like the idea of just like starting from scratch whatever's in our minds. Like we really make intentionally we love to honor the music we love and put it into our music in a way, and it shows either in the production or the songwriting. And we're always, I've seen you guys online and I really resonate with your sense of curation, always trying to find music that will correspond to the things you like. And yeah, you had a question about that.
I had a kind of a question about the musician as curator, because I just finished this book by Simon Reynolds, who's like the British journalist and rock critic, I guess, and he wrote this book called Retromania that investigates basically the sort of like self-cannibalizing pop culture of like the post 80s. Like I guess he talks a lot about Stereolab being the ultimate record collection rockers and stuff like that. And I thought it's to me, it's something that with absolutely no demeaning sense in my book, because I feel like I belong to that, is something that we both stem from in a way, or not necessarily sound wise, but more in the ethos of like how we see like music as a conduit to also do some sort of curation of maybe forgotten about records and things like that. And so I don't know, I guess I wrote this whole little paragraph premise, but I'm going to skip because I don't know. One thing that I thought was interesting is like prior to the 90s, I guess it was more common for rock bands to discuss literary influences or like visual arts. And then it became more like there's almost an expectation now, particularly in the indie world, that bands and artists also be music historians, of sorts. And so it's become both a matter of credibility, but also there's, musical pedagogy, which I'm interested in because I studied musicology. And so I think that like unearthing repertoires that are maybe less part of the mainstream, even the indie mainstream, is something that you've been you've spearheaded as a band and as like, you know, a voice in the music world. And so I think I wanted you to maybe elaborate on that. And I know that you have a DJ night also, right? Or used to in London, right?
That's right.
We still do, yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's very interesting you say that, because it's true. More and more people kind of talk about their influences more openly, or they, reference them aesthetically as well, like in terms of like the sound and the equipment choice and everything. But also I feel maybe in the world music scene, there is also like another branch of bands that I also love, but they do a bit the opposite. They're a bit more like channeled towards kind of like festival, let's have fun, let's dance. This is world music vibes. And from them, you don't really hear any references at all, which I feel like it's a bit of an unfair way to relate to maybe music history as well, because obviously, you know, like you are somewhere from Europe and obviously you were so obviously like influenced by some other countries. So I think some of it is also kind of not obscuring what inspires you and kind of making also their music more accessible to other people in a different decade, in a different geography. I think that's really important. And also just talking about music and discovering music, sharing music together, I think that's a big part of, I don't know, the music itself in a way. The most human way to share music is playing music, making music, and talk about music, listen to music together. In that sense, I think it comes to us almost like quite natural.
That's how it feels for sure. It seems like it's part of your expression is also to share.
Exactly, and that's something that drew us in immediately. We love all the playlists. We've discovered so much great music. So we're tuned in. We're tuned in for sure, and we really appreciate that. On top of obviously the music you create for yourselves, which is also amazing.
And it makes sense too, like hearing your music coming out of all of those influences you share with the world.
How you distill the influences in your own voice is I think, and it's something that is also interesting to have as a, I don't know, like, I guess seeing where the inspiration comes from, or like just what you're into, and then seeing what you make, and having these two elements, it allows for a second layer of like music enjoyment on the part of the listener, because there's obviously the music in a vacuum, and then there's the music as it is. It stems from different streams of influences, and that reading is very interesting as well. I think it's like another layer of music appreciation when you have a sense of where it comes from.
Do you think that influences and records and instrumentation from those records, because primarily the influence of records tends to be through instrumentation and timbre, do you think this is nowadays, in the kind of 21st century way of listening to music and then distilling it as you do and we do, for you guys, is it merely a vehicle to, you know, because when I listen to your music, one of the main things I love is the harmony. I think the chords are so satisfying to listen to. And I feel like if you were obsessed by records and just merely wanting to kind of distill these records, it would just sound like either a pastiche or something very electronic and repetitive. But it seems very much like you think about the music, the actual music, as in the melodies and the chords, before you consider the instrumentation or the production.
Yeah, well, we studied music pretty deeply, you know, in school, and Jojo studied harmony at the CNSM, the Conservatoire National de Paris.
Oh, okay.
I did more. I actually studied classical more than I did jazz, although we both went to a jazz conservatory program in Paris as well. But yeah, I think you're correct. I think I do typically start from sort of like chord melody, and I think Juliette does as well when she writes. But instrumentation is very important. It's something that comes immediately next. And yeah, I do believe that it's something like the harmonic language is probably the start, perhaps, of every Pearl the Oysters kind of attempt at music and at making songs.
But I think that also comes from our love of the real songbook, you know, just like standards and, you know, songs from the old musical repertoire that were brought into like the jazz world later, and just studying deeply the skeleton of those songs and the harmonic path of those songs. And then, I mean, I know the best songs I ever write, I mean, humbly, the best songs when I'm inspired by a song and the songwriting makes sense to me is often after I've been studying songs from the real songbook and finding tricks on how the songwriting was crafted, and then it inspires me to write songs. And so I really think for both of us, it is the root of how we plan out. I mean, how we write.
That's really interesting. I find that really interesting.
Yeah.
How is your process? I mean, what's usually the pathway?
I think it really changes every single time, really.
But I think also in our case, harmony comes pretty early on, like as one of the main elements. Yeah. And instrumentation is a bit, I don't know, like, it really changes from song to song. But sometimes we just really want to work, like, there's a song that's not out yet, but Kit just got a censor, and we really just wanted to have a song that features it in our way. And the whole song is a bit kind of like created around it. But then there are some other where actually the most interesting, or let's say unexpected instruments, they come in very last minute because we are like, this is really missing something. And what is it missing? So in that sense, I guess, it changes a lot.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes it's kind of like we'll be sitting around and being like, you know what, I've never heard an oud and a harpsichord playing at the same time. Let's do a track that does that, you know?
Yeah.
That's so cool.
That's to me, that's a great departure point. I think that's an amazing way to think about texture and it's just like, let's try to make something kind of novel and interesting and different.
The problem which I have with a lot of music nowadays, or the last 30 years maybe, I don't know if you agree with me, is that the cool music where the guys care a lot about the amplifiers and the pickups and make it sound really cool and retro, when they get down to making the music, it's quite simple and it's not necessarily very good musically. And then you've got the amazing kind of song producers and jazz musicians, I don't want to name any names, and they do amazing stuff, and the production is just awful. It's either boring or it just sucks, and it has no attention to anything interesting. And it's kind of annoying how there's not enough music which really tries to marry, okay, let's have imaginative production, but also imaginative music. Let's make a cool record that's also, got nice chords.
I feel that this comeback of like city pop and this music from, jazz fusion, and it's I don't know, we here in LA are feeling pretty good about the effervescence that's going on, but because kids are becoming comment on dit exigeant, pretty
like a little bit more attentive to details in terms of the production, or
no, and even like the just like I think maybe with Wolfpack and everything, it initiated this trend of like
I see what you mean.
Jazz school.
Yeah, like jazz school is cool again. Is cool again,
and like playing music.
It's something that we talked
live
about
with friends, and the level of musicianship of this new generation is pretty high.
The musicianship but I agree with Kit. I think that there is a separation between maybe records that are made to sound really good in terms of the production value and records that are like chops. Records are like really actually like beautiful, not necessarily chops, but like beautiful music at the pre-production level, like the chords and the melodies and the improvisation and everything is like really tasteful, but then the way it's produced maybe isn't as much of a the central thing. I agree with that.
What I like is there's it's becoming more generalized that the attention to chords in pop in general. Yeah. I think the level is getting a little.
I think it has been changing.
Higher.
I agree.
But I do agree about production for sure. I mean, when I think of you guys' work, I'm like, oh yeah, if this is your normal, I'm like, oh yeah.
I had a question about production in Kit Sebastian. I was wondering if you did mostly analog. I'm not trying to get really like gear, to steer the conversations toward.
We'll see the numbers drop off,
Everyone stop listening to the podcast right now.
Okay. Well, yeah. If you're listening, listeners, skip 3 minutes, and we'll get to the good stuff. For us, it's a hybrid.
Okay.
For us, it's a hybrid. We love cassette tape to death. That is the ultimate mojo machine.
Yeah.
And I guess we're kind of honing our craft, maybe. The first album might be a little bit too lo-fi. The last album might be a little bit hi-fi. So it's all, and I guess in the future, it will be some sort of synthesis or kind of,
I think hybrid is the way. There's so many amazing tools in 2024 to use and are just making.
I had basically it was like the premise of another question for me, because I always admire the sort of simplicity of the workflow when using analog. I think that's what I would want, I want everybody to learn the song and come into the studio and just pick a good take, and then if we need to layer some stuff over, we layer some stuff over that. But the sort of having to commit to something is, I don't know, that just this idea to me it seems so much more of a natural process in recording music. And so I always wonder of people who use analog more than we do, perhaps, if it's exclusively a sort of if it's motivated mostly by sort of aesthetic considerations, like it just sounds better, or if it's, as you said, there's like, I think the mojo part is being real. Like you get a certain sound and feel from a specific machine, but also you get a sort of you can't really escape the workflow that it will kind of prescribe. You know what I mean? It's like you can't really deviate from how that process makes you record, and I think that's a beautiful thing because it forces you to make quick choices and things like that. And sometimes I feel like that's what the artists who record with analog technology, that's what they're after. They're after the sort of immediacy or the music being more honest in a way and less about like hyper producing every detail and things like that. And I was wondering if that was the case for you, or if you ever felt like that had been something that motivated this sort of, choice to work with analog and stuff.
I think so. I think when one works exclusively on the computer, they can gather insecurities when they're writing and composing. I think if something is badly mixed on a computer, it's badly mixed. But I think if something's badly mixed in an analog way, there's a chance, not all the time, but there's a chance it might be kind of charming and sort of actually make the record. So I don't know. Yeah, digital mistakes aren't always sort of, if you record too hot digitally, you throw the take away.
That's done.
But I mean, I don't know. Like, there's certain songs we've done where maybe when I was recording Merv, set the preamp too high, and then Merv hit it and kind of slight distortion. We had that on Faust, and we actually thought many times, should we keep it in? Should we not? We decided to keep it in. I don't think anyone will notice this apart from us, But,
yeah.
Where do you typically record, or for this last album anyway?
In between Surrey and a kind of like little town in Tours.
Oh wow!
Yeah,
and you brought your gear there.
Do you have a setup there?
What's your setup there?
We drove. Merv took the plane. I think she was.
I couldn't. I because he just got his driving license, and it's such a long drive, and I just I couldn't. It was a very long drive.
Yeah, 11 hours.
11 hours with Kit, who just got his driving license.
Oh yeah.
It wasn't a good idea.
It was all right.
to go to a house that hasn't been warmed up for a year. Imagine I go the first day, I get a sore throat, the whole
exactly.
Everything.
No.
Yeah, I almost crashed in Rouen, But. So, what about you guys? Do you have a home studio, or are you in and out of LA studios?
So for years we did everything, mostly everything at home. I would say when we lived in Florida,
we always try to track our drums in
studios.
Various studio situations.
Yeah, definitely.
Once we steered away from the drum machine only.
Well, but I mean, even the first album had kind of a mix of both, I guess. But we always, that's something that I could never really crack, is like doing drums that sound good at home. But my friends, some of my friends did. So we recorded drums in Florida and in little music rooms at our friends, and people that knew a little bit more about recording at home without much outboard gear, but making it sound lively and interesting, I guess. I think as with time, I've been more into the idea, and I think Juliet as well, of trying to achieve a higher fidelity than we did, which is, the history of every band, or almost. You start kind of making a crazy record, and you don't know anything about production. I didn't know anything about engineering really when we made the first record. So there's a lot of things that are in the red that were made on the computer. And when I brought them to the mixing engineer, he was like, I don't know if I can work with this.
They're always like this,
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Then you end up also mixing yourself because you can't deal with these people.
But it's also like car engineers or something. You take your car in and they go, I don't know. It's your job,
Exactly.
It's part of the tradition.
Well, now we have this relationship with the person who mixes all of our records, Shags, and he knows what to expect. He knows some things are going to be done in a not very orthodox way sometimes, but ultimately he accommodates, he indulges us.
So,
we've gotten better at engineering and monitoring everything. I think that's it. We do a better job now. The thing that has changed mainly for the last album is that after signing to our current record label, we had access to their studio, which was
oh my god, that's
which was a really new development for us, and something that we were really excited about. And the last record we recorded for the most part at the Stone's Throw studio in Highland Park, and we live in the same neighborhood in LA, so it was just very convenient and very nice to have access to the same equipment. There's something about building a cohesive sound being obviously much easier when you can return to the same place that has the same effects and the same machines, and it just made it so much easier to kind of control at every step of the way.
To me, to be honest, the idea of recording in a studio, it scares me. I'm so used to just like recording, just being me and him in a room.
Yeah.
Being on our own kind of pace is so nice. So I don't know.
I don't think we ever will. Yeah. I don't think.
Yeah, I'm not into. Yeah.
But also, I guess this is where we deviate, because I guess I don't know your complete music taste, but obviously I can hear the influences, and these guys, all of the yacht rock guys and the city pop guys, are using the best equipment ever built.
That's right. Yeah, I guess.
Whilst a lot of the musicians that we love, are using sort of outdated, worn-out Soviet equipment, or kind of second-hand radio equipment that would have been used perhaps in Egypt, and then in the 50s, and then kind of repackaged for recording in the 60s. So I don't think we'll ever go studio, because we need it to sound a little bit. But
I love that.
Oh, and I think that's great. That's exactly. That's where when you find, and I think you found it earlier, which is great. But the method that works, and
But if I was to walk into some of the studios that you've and saw the equipment you guys using, I'd love it. See sort of Neumann's and Fairchilds and that.
I have a question. I'm putting my name on the list further.
Okay. My question is a bit more personal. Like, I was wondering, how come you decided to move from France to the US? And how is it going there?
That's a good question.
Yeah, what are the differences? How does it did it change the way you work?
Definitely, yeah.
First, why did you move? Why did you leave France?
Well, that's a question. That's a question for Juliet, because she kind of.
I guess I'm the one who
brought me into it. Yeah,
yeah,
exactly.
Well, okay. So first of all, both of us have American mothers, and it's a coincidence that we met in high school. We were in the same class, and we both had American mothers, and so we. I always had in the back of my mind this idea of like wanting to explore my mother's country, at one point of my life. And my dad is a musician, and he studied at Berkeley in Boston in the 70s.
Yeah.
And, with my mom, they met in New York. I always romanticize their love story and how my mom lived in San Francisco and my dad crossed the country to live with her, even though they had known each other for 1 week previous and things like that.
God.
Like there was a whole
like a
romantic
film,
story.
yeah.
And it's funny because now I'm stuck in a loop touring the country, like in when we tour.
You're recreating.
I'm kind of like recreating the scene of like my dad crossing the country for my mom
forever.
Stuck
in a feedback loop of touring the US.
So we met in high school and then we had bands together. We made music. Jojo was also caught in a never-ending studies. And I felt it was time to explore. So we moved in 2015. I booked tickets to go live in New York for a minute, but then Jojo was like, I want to come too, but I wanted to make sense for my studies. So he ended up applying for universities, and he got into the University of Florida, studying musicology for a PhD. And so I moved from New York to Florida, and that's kind of how the adventure started. We didn't really plan to stay as long.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say.
Yeah.
Because I don't think, and the band didn't really exist when we left, but we had some songs that I guess ended up on the first album when we left to the US. But really, originally, we had no plans on, no big design for the band, it wasn't even a band. We just had a few songs on a hard drive, and the vague idea of trying to make a record out of it, an album. And at the time, we would have been fine with just releasing a cassette and just never, this band never existing in any other capacity than as a bedroom pop project online. But what happened is when I moved to Florida, I very quickly met a group of people in Gainesville, the town where I lived, and then Juliet joined, that were more seasoned DIY musicians. They knew how to. They had a collective called Celestial Sound, and they ran that collective as a cooperative. And they had a label, and they did stage props, and they built really cool stages for festivals, and had a bus that ran on vegetable oil, and it was all very romantic and cool to me. And so meeting these people and them taking an interest in what we were doing gave us the impetus to, well, I guess try it in a more serious way, give it a more serious try. And so, yeah, they helped us put a band together and kind of put us on the road. They were like, we're going to release your record. And that's when we released, I think we did a cassette with them in Florida and the vinyl with Alexandre and Croque Macadam in France. So that was the first record that we made. And basically we got this like push from the Florida people to, well, now if we're going to press any amount of like physical media, you kind of need to go on the road and try to sell it. And so that's when we caught the touring bug and stuff, and we decided to stay and pursue that. Obviously, even beyond, me getting my degree, which took forever anyway. But halfway through my musicology degree, I was like, I don't know, I feel like we should just pursue the band first. So I got the degree, but the band had become the main thing. Yeah,
I mean, it's just hard. Yeah. I don't know how it was for you, Juliet, but like me, when we first started, I was mainly actually working in film. And then at some point it was just impossible, especially when you start touring. It's not only the actual touring, but also in our case, we also don't have a management. Most of the time, we don't have a tour manager. So like that all hands-on approach, you feel just so... Plus, you have to stay creative on the top of all the admin and performance bit. So
it's crazy. I mean, both fields. And I absolutely want to know more about your path, Merv, like coming from cinema and transitioning to music. And also I read a little bit about everything you did before moving to London. It's just so fascinating. Such a beautiful story. And I'm curious to know how it was to transition from being in the movie industry and studying cinema and then transitioning to, because for all three of us, coming to a new country and discovering everything about it came with also a new career or new goals anyway.
Yeah.
And building something that was, it was all discovery for us.
Do
you feel the same way? Like,
I feel very much the same way. Yeah, because it's actually this Kit Sebastian is a project. It started only 2 weeks after I moved to London. In the first year, we started to record the album, but at the time, for me, it was just something that I was doing purely for joy. You know, I had my kind of like day job. I was trying to find new projects because first I just graduated. I moved from Rome to actually. I lived in the US for a while in St. Louis, Missouri, in Midwest, and then London.
For how long were you in Missouri?
It was about 9 months, and then I was kind of kicked out of the country. But anyways, I will tell it to you another time. It was a bit of a crazy story. But in a way, I think it was one of the best things that London brought to me. Also, I mean, for instance, in your case, I want to really hear about it because, like, from Paris to a nice part of the US, I don't know how the transition was, but for me, I think the kind of culture in London, from the weather to the way people communicate, like all the kind of social and physical geography was so different to what I was used to, and even my way of being and behaving. And so music in that sense, I think that's helped me to still stay a bit more true to myself in a way, you know, be very sincere and direct. And because you can just really do things the way you want to do them and express the things the way you want to express them. Because I guess like in both of our bands, from the sound to the visual aspect to the lyrics, everything is so important. And in that sense, it becomes just more than something that you do. It almost becomes a huge part of your life.
Absolutely. We feel that being a musician is also being part of a community. And that really helps narrow down, like, as you say, like, if you meet musicians, or like, it narrows down getting to know someone to like sharing a passion, you know. It helped us so much. Like, as soon as we met, as when Jojo met this crew in Gainesville, then we were on track with like building things with them and making music together. And it was just a way to connect that was so special. And going back to like the first, like all the cultural differences and everything, for us, that was extremely inspiring because we were back to being kids, basically, because everything was different. For us, the ecosystem just around us was just so different. The weather, everything around us was discovery. And it made us go back to, a very primary version of us, you know, just discovering.
A childlike wonder, I will say.
We're not that young. Huh?
Yeah, a childlike wonder. Because it's so different. It was this very remote, I guess, part of the US that we had never been to, the swampy part of Florida, so like north of Florida. And I guess it just, for us, it was just very exotic because we knew the US from the prism of our respective, you know, American family. And they were both from New York, essentially. So all I knew of the US was really New York and a little bit California because I'd been as a teenager. And Juliet had family also in LA, so she knew basically New York and LA, right? So it just landing in swampy Florida, in a state that is, you know, notoriously kind of right wing and a little backwards in terms of the policy and everything. Well, yeah, you know. But being in a college town where, you know, 90% of the people are very progressive and more forward thinking and more about, you know, building things up and community and really DIY. It was for us, it was discovering the States through being in Florida. I was discovering what DIY was, the ethos behind having a band and making it work, being in a smaller town and stuff, like what it meant and what it meant for us to do. And sort of have, as you said, having this overarching view of the band as like this entertainment machine that goes on tour. You don't have a TM, you do your own merch, you make your own videos, you make everything yourself. And so this thing never left us, but it was introduced to us really when we moved to the States. I think that in Paris, we had a very different view of what it meant to make and release music. I think we were very much caught in the impression that, you know, you made music until you were picked up by this bigger entity that would catapult you on the path to becoming a professional musician, whether it be in pop or any other thing, but I guess in pop, there's a whole setup in France with the subsidies thing, to kind of like, in our minds, it was like this. It was, you make music, then a label notices, they take interest, then all of a sudden you have a whole team around you with like a booking agency and all of these things, and you're on the path to like being a professional musician. And we didn't think there was any other way until we moved to the US and we started like doing it ourselves and having this very incremental and slow build for years and years and years that took us where we are now, which is still, we're still a very independent band that does a lot of things by ourselves, but there's a little bit more of a team around us. But for years there wasn't. So I wonder if that your experience of making music in the UK and particularly in London was any different. I'm assuming it's fairly different from France, because France is such a small market, right?
There are no subsidies, my friend. Yeah, we have to suffer.
So close and yet so far.
Exactly. So I would say it's quite tough because there are so many musicians, and there are actually so many good musicians. So huge competition. The venues very underfunded, and of course then it goes down to the bands and the booking agents and everything. I don't know if you noticed it, but when you tour in Europe, always from the food that you get served to the hotels, there's a certain standard. In the UK,
I know, we noticed.
we noticed.
So I think in Kit's case, I don't know, it's actually something quite interesting, but like, even though he is from here and he stayed here, I think we can say that some of our music and the way we are is kind of almost reaction to our reality. No?
Yeah, I mean, we haven't got enough time in this podcast to talk about our grievances with this country. And it's just constantly, you just feel, what a waste. What a fucking waste, Especially with the music world, right? So much talent, yet just no one up there seems to care. But yes, our music comes from love of, these records and these cultures, from Azerbaijan and Georgia and Turkey and all of these places. But equally, it can also come from other places of, like Merv was saying, a kind of reaction against where you're from. And kind of, and I think one of the things which makes England good and English music good is so much of the music from this country seems to be reacting about where they're from. Like you hear punk from other countries, apart from America. That's another debate. But you hear punk from France from the 70s, and it doesn't really work. But it does work when it's in England, because there is a real anger here about just so many things. So I think being in a beautiful place makes great music. Being in an ugly place makes equally good music,
Yes.
Definitely. And this one thing is, whatever we say, is the kind of coexistence of so many different kind of like people from all different kind of backgrounds, which means that they all bring their music, their food, their ways of being to London.
Yes.
And to be honest, nowhere else in the world I discovered this much music, and all very different from each other, and all amazing and interesting and quite creative. Like, there was now it's not as, I guess, alive as it used to be anymore, but like the whole South London jazz scene was really so fresh and just so good, and it kind of continues. So in that sense, I guess whatever we say, London is still a very important city for music, and I think it will always be. It's just a shame about the way that the system works.
Do you find that your peers, like musical peers in London, have the same grievances? And do you find a way to like join forces and create your own comfortable base to make music together? Or is it just always a struggle? I don't know.
We are quite solitary. I mean, I think the way we are, I don't know, maybe Kit, you go ahead. But I think the way we make music is very solitary and very much like just us. And
Yeah.
I personally find so much comfort in that, because we just know how things work between us and everything is so effortless. However, we of course have musician friends, and yeah, I mean, for some of them it just goes extremely well, and they are kind of like some, I guess, more exceptional cases. But other than that, yeah, I mean, I have some friends, they really try to make it for years, and now it just doesn't work out for them anymore. Like a good band that I know, they just like split up now, or other people, they have to work so many other jobs.
We've witnessed that phenomenon in France a lot. The country is so small, like can try years. If it's not picked up, then it's really hard for the morale.
Yeah.
I think also an important part of a scene is geography. So, Merv was saying the South London jazz scene. It's called the South London jazz scene because it's in South London. These scenes exist less and less because as the housing market goes up, and people can't just move to the same area their mates live, You got some people living with their parents, you got some people having to move to Zone 5, in the outskirts of London, So you get all of these different people living very far away, which 10 years ago, it was less of the case. So in terms of musical scenes and people kind of working together, I would say there's a lot more alienation, which isn't necessarily a terrible thing. It means that the music changes. It means that the music becomes a bit more introspective and maybe a bit more melancholic or whatever. So I think it has a different effect.
There is a scene right now in London, though, I would say this kind of like post-punk, kind of very British identity and British anger-driven kind of, Yard Act, Idols, Black Country New Rock. There is whole like, especially post-Brexit, I think. I at least really, being an outsider, I've been really observing that's coming back. Whilst before that, maybe South London or some bands that are a bit more maybe kind of, let's say, world groove / psychedelia.
Yeah. I think that definitely exists.
And what about Turkey? I'm so curious to know, like, how the music scene over there, and if you have you ever been part of it, and how do you feel now as a Turkish musician in London? Like, do you ever tour there?
We played in Istanbul a few times, and it's always an incredible feeling because, of course, like at least half of our lyrics are in Turkish. So you see people understand the lyrics and sing them with you. It's just an incredible feeling. And I think Turkish people as an audience, I hope you come play here one day. And it would be actually amazing if we can make it work together. Like it would be really amazing. It's just like, it's a very, very passionate audience, like overwhelmingly passionate about music and the musicians. So that's an amazing feeling. And I think the Turkish music scene, I was never really a part of it. I left kind of early enough. But I would say it is, it's been ups and downs, a bit in line with the politics and how they fund or not fund the festivals, because unfortunately it reached to a point where they were actually canceling music festivals in this country. But still, I mean, there is so much very original and creative music that, also there are musicians who are touring in Europe as well. And these are not only the names from the 70s, but also like from the current music scene. And the pop music in Turkey is actually not bad, I would say. Yeah.
I would love
I know very little of any contemporary Turkish
I can
music.
send you guys some
stuff.
Please.
Yeah.
It'd be amazing.
What about you? Like, how do you relate to the music scene in France?
We notoriously don't like. We really don't relate to most of it. But I mean, I don't mean to be a hater or anything. It's just that we've always felt, and that's for real, and that's very earnest, and I say that in a candid way. Our main influences being so Anglo-American in essence made us very inadequate for the most part in France, I would say. I mean, and I'm talking about, everybody loves the Beatles, right? Like everybody knows there are some reference points that I guess exist for pretty universally, and bands that have crossed the Channel and the Atlantic or whatever and have like become like kind of mainstays in France. But for the most part, the music that we always were trying to channel, essentially, in France didn't get the same amount of I don't know, like it just felt like we weren't understood. And I think that's has begun to change a little bit. It's different now. But as you know, late teenagers in our early 20s, I was obsessed with like Todd Rundgren, Electric Light Orchestra, the bands like this that really in France weren't met with the kind of love and reverence that they maybe had in at least the US. I can't really speak for the UK, although I'm assuming it's also more of a thing there. But the first few shows that we played in Florida, I remember people at the end coming to talk to us and being like, "Oh, you like Todd Rundgren? Oh, you like Stereolab? Oh, you like this and that?" And I was like, "Yeah, we do." But just like my reaction was so pure because I was so used to people not, the reference just flying over everybody's heads in France. And I say that in a absolutely, like, I have the most respect for, the French music culture, especially, I feel like there are very, very, very important records that have been made in France in the 60s and 70s and later. But it's true that, like, as far as like the stuff that we were into, it just seemed to not meet the resonance, the cultural resonance that we were hoping. And so it made us feel very, like, kind of outside of the main streams of influences that preoccupied our, French musician cohort at the time. It was hard.
I think that's something we can both understand.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But you guys, I read somewhere that you guys got picked up by your first label from a cold email, right? Is that right?
Yeah, it is right. I thought it was just normal. And then,
we had no clue. We just we made the album. It was even mastered, the song order, everything, the press shoots, the music video, everything was written, and we were like,
it's like doing out.
What are we gonna do now?
Do an album, make a music video, send an email. I thought that's what you meant to do. But
I mean, you can try forever.
We are not very good at the business side. We still aren't, actually.
Well, it's a wonderful thing that it worked, but I can tell you that it was totally, deservedly so, obviously. Yeah. I think it's a very compelling thing to receive that in an email with the whole vision and the whole universe. Everybody would be a fool not to, consider it, at least. But it's amazing that you found that label in particular, because I feel like it's such an important, to me, it's huge. As a lover of Brazilian music, for example, I mean, I'm obsessed with the work that they've been doing.
Yeah, they're great.
And congrats on Brainfeeder also, because living in LA, it's a huge deal. Like when I saw that, I was like, wow, so excited for you.
So cool.
It's amazing.
They're the coolest. I mean,
it's amazing.
They've been great. Yeah,
they've been good. I mean, we got to get over to LA now.
You
That
should.
Was my first thought when I saw that. I was like, that means they're coming.
See what all the fuss is about in LA.
Well, we'll show you around. Definitely.
Yeah.
We just had friends over from the UK, actually.
Mm-hmm. Rashid and Tyler.
Yeah. Do you know Sky Daddy Rashid?
No.
So our friend Rashid has this amazing band called Sky Daddy, and they make music together with his partner Tyler. And
they've been coming to LA quite a lot, and they really like they've been loving it.
Yeah.
Is there any announcements coming up soon, or I mean, is there any plans?
No, the announcement is we need a call with our American agent. I think that's cool for now. Yeah. Yeah. Hopefully in 2025, but nothing concrete yet. We'll see.
It will happen. It's got to happen, and it will happen.
Mm-hmm.
It'd be good to go to
I'm sure it will.
America.
So, do you feel that from the start with Mr. Bongo and with Brainfeeder now, like, have you felt support from the start with the band? I mean, I feel like everything came so organically, like you guys meeting each other from an ad, right, on Facebook, and it had been only 2 weeks you were there. Like,
that's amazing.
Do you feel that you're still like rocking on that energy of just like it made sense, and so it's just organically easy to keep going and be creative together and release records?
I think there's two things. Firstly, any musician will kind of say this, that nowadays that they work very, very hard, and they probably would like to see a bit more success, or at least money from it.
Yeah.
But I mean, that's a grievance that every single musician who works hard, which is most of us, has. At the same time, I was saying to Merv the other day that in a way, it's kind of ridiculous that the music that we make, whilst it's very poppy and some of the songs you can sing along to the melodies, it's kind of ridiculous that we have been so successful because some of our references are obscure. One of the biggest influences is music from Azerbaijan. I don't think most people know where that is. So in a way, I think it's really cool that we've had the success we've had so far because
I mean, you're bringing your audience with you.
Yeah. I think that's what I was trying to get to with my initial question. That was very kind of meandering, but yeah, it's the sort of mission. I feel like on top of just being a purveyor of music, you're also like there's the second layer of what you do, which is like almost like education, And I think that's I don't know if that's that was part of the project from the get-go, but that's how it's one way that I don't know. I guess I'm experiencing your band.
And that's also because, I mean, your sense of drama in your music, which I can see and know is totally related to your love of cinema and storytelling. But that's really special. And I feel that it's super inviting and extremely cool.
You have a lot of drama too, by the way, especially in your visual world as well. Like some of your videos, I just watch them it ends and I'm like, okay, just watch it again. Because it is just like this. It is really beautiful. Yeah. The way you are is also so authentic, I think that's really important.
I wanted to ask, are the lyrics in your music, are they more culturally conscious or are they more kind of related to your experiences as individuals, existing outside of culture and,
Existing outside of culture.
Well, I think, I mean, it's I would say that it's culturally conscious in that sense. I think it's hard not to be, for us, because it's very personal. I guess it is also very, anchored in a sense of, culture, and societal considerations and things like that. I think it's fairly important for us. We try also but the lyrics have evolved so much from the first. We loved. I guess the origin of this band was like almost like a cartoon project. It's like we're gonna build. We didn't want our faces to be associated with the band. That's also why there hasn't been a record cover with a photo of us or something like that. And early on, we were into world building. So this idea of the space explorers discovering a new planet that is actually Florida, like this sort of metaphor, it just lent itself to us making music a little bit outside of the, I guess, consideration of any sense of establishing an intimate lyricism, talking about yourself and things. But that has definitely evolved over time. I would say, since Flowerland, really, our third album, it became much more introspective, the lyrics, and so they're quite personal now. At this point, they've become really.
I'd say our point of start is really like the inner workings,
Yeah.
But it's also very linked to societal matters.
Would you say some of it came after? I don't know. At least that's what happened to me in my personal process. Like initially in the first few albums, I was almost trying hard to make it personal, or when it was personal, I was, it was becoming either the third singular person or the concept of the song would become actually like the heart of the lyrics, But after a while, I think you also, because I was almost feeling, who am I? Like, why am I entitled to talk about my feelings to all these people? Why would they care, but now, like in the last few years, I guess it changed the way I think about that. And it's not about being entitled or not, but it's about how you can share it and how it can become actually a collective space, that
Absolutely.
you can also share with your audience. So how was it for you?
I mean, I think there's definitely beauty in like finding your voice and being able to. I mean, for me, music and art in general is putting form into abstraction. You know, like because the whole world, everything just is. It's for me, it's all abstraction. But we're here to do the work to piece it together and make something out of everything we're feeling, everything we're seeing, what's going on in the world, the sounds, and it takes time to find your techniques, follow your intuitions, and I don't think it ever has to be anything, but it's really important to know how to listen to yourself and trust your intuitions and as time goes by and you get more confident with your skills too, that's I feel that's how you get to being the closest to your own voice. So it takes time.
It's true. It takes out some of the shyness. Yeah, it's true.
Yeah.
This is something for us that has been become a sort of recurring strategy when writing lyrics, is to use the lyric to basically add a layer of meaning that is sometimes going in the opposite direction of what the music can convey. So we've been trying to fight the identity of that's been ascribed to us from the get-go, that we were like the sunshine bubblegum band. And it's something that I both, couldn't help, because we wrote these like only major keys song, and it was very, influenced by bands like the Free Design or the Beach Boys or whatever. So that this sort of you're immediately put in a certain pigeonholed in a certain bass category of like, what is your band? Is it and our band was we're the twee sunshine pop band, etc. And after a while, we didn't feel very at ease with that. Not only because I guess we were trying to get out of that, but because we felt like it was not always it wasn't totally in phase with the music that we were trying to make, actually, and we had been trying to make since the beginning. And I guess over the past 2 or 3 records, we've been branching out into this territory where typically the lyrics can there's a tension, right, between what the lyrics can try to say and what the music is typically received as, which is still like, we make really happy songs with catchy choruses or whatever. I guess it's part of who we are, and it's part of the way we like to weave music notes together. But I guess lyrically it's not necessarily all that we've been trying to communicate, so it's interesting.
Do you feel that you guys are like part of a tradition of songwriting, of lyric writing and poetry, or do you have references that you think of a lot? Or
I mean, I don't know how it is for you, Kit, when you write, but for me, it depends when I'm writing and what I'm reading around those times.
Mm-hmm.
So I wouldn't say just this tradition or like these poets or writers.
Do you think that also comes from being what did you study in movie school?
So actually, before movie school, I studied sociology, and then I studied like film history and theory and practice. It was like a program that was kind of like a master's program, quite academic with some practical classes as well.
And did you was directing?
So it was there were classes on directing, but also there were classes about, let's say, Italian films from the 80s. Some classes were super specific and super academic, and some were about like directing or editing.
So there was a lot of, I'm sure, analysis on like storytelling and
exactly. And I think like so many of the great directors, actually that was one of my questions. We couldn't come to that, but like your favorite films and directors, whether you have any favorite directors. But my favorite directors, they are all actually also kind of writers and great thinkers. And I guess like that's one thing that I see as a difference between good musicians and good filmmakers. Maybe I find the filmmakers to be a bit more, they're more thinkers, I guess, and observers, as opposed to musicianship also comes from somewhere that's almost a bit more instinctual, a bit less about, of course, there is the theory and everything, but it's a bit more almost instant and instinctual. Yeah. Okay, your favorite directors.
Juju.
I think I have a soft spot for like late 70s, like Brian De Palma, like, kind of like film, thrillers from the end of the 70s. I really love Brian De Palma. I love Phantom of the Paradise. I mean, there's.
It's hard to just remember. Yeah,
I'm a huge Agnes Varda fan.
I love Agnes. We love. Yeah.
She's the best. She might be my number one. Yeah, Jojo.
I would have had a ready-made answer for this years ago, but now I'm like so like scattered in my like, I guess, film taste. Lately, what have we seen that's really amazing? I don't know. I feel like the Greg Araki. Do you know about this? Greg Araki, he's very LA. He's an LA like queer.
He made like queer movies.
Queer filmmaker. He's obsessed with like aliens and stuff. It's pretty kitsch. It's like camp,
fantastic
campy.
kitsch. Okay.
Yeah.
What about you guys? What are your number ones?
It's very difficult. I don't know. I like I like a lot of Russian, French. I guess for me, with
Czech New Wave.
Czech, yeah. Do you know Czech New Wave? I guess for me, it's either Tarkovsky or Jacques Tati. So, which are two very different, directors, but there's something kind of similar to them in a way, which I won't elaborate on.
I love Solaris. Solaris was such a big like aesthetic shock for me when I first saw it. It's amazing.
I think I'm jealous, because as musicians, we don't really get an opportunity to play with time like directors can do. I think you can actually, but very skilled composers can. But I feel like that's something in the future it'd be good to try in our music, to get that sensation of time kind of stopping.
I love that.
Whatever.
That's so cool. So I want to know, Merv, your favorite directors.
I have so many. Okay, recently now I'm back to Rainer Werner Fassbinder. He's like this German director. Yeah, I just love his films, and I love his also series. He did like so many very good series for the TV as well. You would be surprised, like, wow, people were watching this on the TV. And then I quite like Bergman, because I love these characters who can depict women in their, like darkness and depths. I think like
his movie Monica. It's
was it A Summer with Monica? Wait,
it was my favorite movie when I was a teenager, and I remember relating to her so much.
Summer with Monica, yeah.
So Bergman is the goat. And have you? I mean, are you? I can definitely hear it in your music, but what's your relationship with like soundtracks from movies?
Wow.
Have you ever thought of like working maybe collaborative? Work with the director?
Would be amazing.
Yeah, we wish. I mean, that would be good. Yeah. We never really scored a film. They use actually songs for a few Netflix shows.
Oh, nice.
Like a vampire. there is this like show, and there is this weird guy who owns the cafe that only plays Kit Sebastian.
No,
it's a really bad insight onto our fans.
It's amazing.
I don't think for fans watch that film. Yeah.
Yeah. So I hopefully they're not trying to say this is what a typical Kit Sebastian fan looks like.
Weirdos.
I've always wanted us to do a ballet.
He does, yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
So maybe in the future. I don't know. Well, what about you guys?
We actually might be working on
a soundtrack for an animated series,
like a cartoon.
It's not,
which is
it's
not confirmed yet.
But it's something that we would love to do.
Yeah.
We've been approached about it, and it's something that we'd love to be. But I don't know if it would be as Pearl The Oysters. It would be Juliette and I. I think we would try to make it sound a little different than.
But I think right now I feel that we have too much to say. I mean, we have too much. We don't have. We really want to make songs. I think that's really our. Because we ideally it would be awesome to make a soundtrack, but it might not be in our priorities right now. I feel that we have just so much to express in the songwriting.
I do feel like that's the format.
Albums.
That's the medium for us. Has been songwriting has been the most successful thing for us to channel our musical urge, But I've always loved soundtracks and. Well, obviously, like the Italian, there's such a rich tradition.
Italian and French.
In French, exactly, Italian and French. And like, it's something that I respect a lot. And I studied classical music mostly with the idea that I would try to do that later. But then, I don't know, it was so elitist in the conservatory in Paris that it kind of, I don't know, it pushed me away in a weird sense from, just that ambition, and I was like, no, you know what? My thing is like I write pop songs, and so I'm going to do that. And I guess I haven't really looked
needs
back.
us, I think. Yeah, we are needed in the pop world.
Exactly.
More of us, please. Yeah.
But what about a feature, Kit Sebastian?
That would be amazing if you were. Yeah, I feel like and I love, for example, I love broadcast. I don't know if you enjoy broadcast, but being approached. I feel like if someone would approach you and we're like, I want a Kit Sebastian soundtrack, that would be amazing. I think, yeah,
exactly.
So let you cook, as the kids say, let you do your thing, and like, I feel like that would be awesome.
It would be amazing if also they let us direct it. Like if we made the
yes.
song, I think that would be the ideal. Yeah.
When we come to LA, we'll drop by Hollywood, see.
Yeah, exactly.
Knock at the door.
Honestly,
drop a few screenplays.
That's been a surprise for us. Moving to LA, we actually, being on a label now that can finance like music videos. So we've been meeting all those directors and collaborating with them, and it's been the dream.
Oh my God,
we
so
had that we never thought would happen.
Yeah.
Your music videos for this album are just like incredible. They're really,
thank you.
Really so good.
When you'll come to LA, we'll.
Yeah, you can meet all these people.
Yeah, and you need to feature in the music videos on that condition. Yeah.
So
what is next for you guys? Yeah, I think they will have better cameras than our cameras. We can use their cameras. And fancy lenses. Yeah.
So one of the directors we worked with also works with Ginger Roots. I don't know if you know that artist.
Oh my God. Yeah.
They basically made a video for every song
on the last record, which is,
and then he kind of compiled them, and it became kind of like a movie.
It's a film.
It's incredible.
But he's been working with tube cameras, which is like kind of
this transitory technology, I guess, from the 80s, but it's like a TV camera from the 80s, I guess.
Yeah, and we were on tour with them, and so David Guttel, who's the director and who's also on stage with Ginger Root, the band, and films them during their set. It's so fun. So they project
That's one thing I've been wanting to do, actually. I don't know how they do it, because I go on stage with like a small VHS, but just at the beginning. But yeah, like we had this idea to project the audience as well, just not like the us basically playing, but also kind of seeing the audience from our eyes, and also kind of from the length that we see them, and the way we want to zoom in them, so
that's cool.
It becomes a bit more interactive. But
they have a whole system. It's kind of crazy, actually. It's pretty crazy. But when we were on tour, he would find on Facebook Marketplace all those tube cameras that he bought. Like he bought so many on tour for so cheap, and now he has plenty of tube cameras.
And I guess he can fix them and stuff. So it's
But he probably could help you figuring out a way to stream that like directly on screen. So that's a great idea. I mean,
it's something that's underused, I feel. Live projections.
Yeah, there's a Kraftwerk performance before they went techno, where they've got a real drummer, and they do the same thing. I mean, it's not them doing it; it's the venues, in early 70s Germany, and it's a really interesting effect. Recently, last tour, we've been trying to like draw the audience into our music a bit more. I don't know if you guys make a concerted effort to do this live, but through kind of gimmicks and things like that.
Yeah, how is your interaction with your audience? Yeah, very good question.
Oh, thank you.
5 points.
I think it's kind of hit or miss because we don't really have a plan, and we're very we
wing it every night. It's a little
different.
different and awkward, and
Well,
sometimes it's not awkward. Sometimes it is.
Yeah, sometimes we have mojo working,
exactly.
and sometimes a little less. But we don't let it be an issue, though. I think we just listen to like the vibe we're feeling, and don't try to force anything.
Mm-hmm.
But we don't plan a lot.
We don't plan.
Yeah, we don't plan for what we're going to do or say, and so sometimes that backfires.
Sometimes a little bit. But mostly not.
But mostly people, I think, because we have that like playful banter with Juliette, we go back and forth, we make jokes, and it's like...
So you make jokes again?
Yes, yeah, we do.
But it's just, we try to behave as if, it's like you're with us in our little living room, but it can work or not depending on the audience. We found that, like, for example, in when we toured Europe, it was hit or miss. Typically in the US, it's mostly hit, but in some places, I guess we had some awkward shows, like in Germany, where people were not laughing, and I was like,
Switzerland.
Okay, yeah, Switzerland.
Oh, Switzerland.
Yeah.
Already if they show up.
There's something weird that it's just so hard for us to like set anything in stone when it comes to that. But you guys, you work on gimmicks more. Like, I think it's cool. I think we should do it at one point.
Yeah, absolutely.
But it's just, yeah.
But in our case, for instance, Kit from day one, he told me, Merve, don't talk to me on stage. Don't make jokes. I don't know if you remember it. So, and me, I have to communicate with people. Like, like sometimes when you're on stage and the audience is dark, I just feel I don't have ground underneath my, feet. So I always ask for a bit of, like, I need to see people. So for me, it's really important. And we have a few gimmicks.
Yeah, to be honest, I'm very happy with where we are now. I think we're doing really well. I really love our live show we've crafted, but it did take time. Unlike the studio stuff, which came naturally. Me personally, I'm not really much of a live person. I don't really go to gigs, so it was sort of hard to find a point of reference, because I knew that kind of the Pink Floyd way of doing things, where you don't really look at the audience, was pretentious. I knew the James Brown of doing things would be ridiculous if we attempted that. And so it's kind of like, and that kind of the rock and roll kind of thing is just really, really embarrassing. So
it's force it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, you can't.
I agree with that.
No.
You have to find what feels natural to you.
Yes,
exactly.
I think we found our voice now. It took us time, but I'm very, very happy. I think we've got a good mixture of aggression, sensuality, whatever.
I can't wait for you to come to LA, or maybe catch a show in Europe sometime, but I would love to.
When are you guys back? It's more likely that you are going to come before we hit.
Oh, no.
We'll see.
Also,
come back to London.
I wanted to apologize about the Pitchfork London debacle.
Oh my God. Don't worry about
it. It was really handled so poorly, not by us. So.
No. I guess it was a bit of a mess. That's fine. And then, Dawson is a cool neighborhood. With my husband, we just went to have a very nice dinner, had a nice walk by the canal. And I was just sad I couldn't meet you, but finally,
So we are coming back to Europe,
and we're coming to the UK also. In May and June we'll be touring Europe and the UK, and we have a show in London, I think, in June, early June. Hopefully.
Do you have any? I know it's time. We
can't stop talking. We actually just wanted to get to know each other, and this was.
but is there any touring on the horizon for you guys in Europe? Maybe we'll be there. Who knows?
We just done one.
We had finished one, but actually we'll play Paris in March, but you are probably not there. April, Barcelona,
no,
Istanbul. Let's meet in Istanbul in March.
Yeah, that would be great. That sounds great.
Romania. Did Romania.
Oh, that's awesome. Whoops. Sorry
Heidelberg.
Charlie Arquette.
It was lovely talking, and I hope we can meet in the flesh sometime, either on this side of the ocean or the other. But I'd love to, and I'd love to see you play. Obviously, that's
same. Yeah, it will happen sooner or later.
We'd like to see you play. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, we can't imagine it. The albums sound so amazing.
Yours too. Oh my.
And I
very
wanted to
grateful
say
for
we
it.
keep hearing Kit Sebastian everywhere we go in LA.
True.
Like you're beloved.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And like coffee
shops and
coffee
restaurants
shops and
and
at the we went
retail.
into a bookstore and I heard a song that was familiar and I was like, that's Kit Sebastian, isn't it? Yeah. And we talked to the owner. That's in our neighborhood, and we talked to the owner, and he was like, "Yeah, I'm a big fan and stuff." So anyway, you have fans here.
We didn't know. We don't know these things.
We need to catch up with each other. That's
Yeah.
let you know
Yeah.
how much you're beloved here. And I think if you the show here when it will happen will be
it will be
really
great.
well attended.
Oh,
and
for
really,
sure.
really fun.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
No, and in London, I think we are probably in London in June. So definitely let us know, and
Yes.
we'll meet you. We'll be there.
Sounds good.
Yeah, looking forward to seeing you guys play live, definitely. Well,
this is goodbye for now.
Yeah.
yep.
Thanks for listening to the Talkhouse Podcast, and thanks to Pearl and the Oysters and Kit Sebastian for chatting. If you liked what you heard, check out all the great stuff at talkhouse.com. This episode was produced by Myron Kaplan, and the Talkhouse theme is composed and performed by The Range. See you next time.